but they are very proud when he calls them really useful.
I'm going to the scrapyard today, Edward called to Thomas. What? Already? You're not that old, replied Thomas cheekily. Thomas was only teasing.
The scrapyard is full of rusty old parts and machinery. They are broken into pieces, loaded into cars, and Edward pulls them to the steelworks, where they are melted down and used again.
Today, there was a surprise waiting for Edward in the yard. It was a traction engine. Hello, said Edward. You're not broken and rusty. What are you doing here? I'm Trevor. They're going to break me up next week. What a shame, said Edward.
My driver says I only need some paint, polish, and oil to be as good as new. But my owner says I'm old-fashioned.
Edward snorted. People say I'm old-fashioned, but I don't care.
Sir Topham Hatt says I'm a useful engine.
What work did you do?
My owner would send us from farm to farm.
We threshed corn, hauled logs, and did lots of other work. The children loved to see us. Trevor shut his eyes, remembering. Oh, yes, I like children. Edward set off for the station. Broken up, what a shame. Broken up, what a shame. I must tell Trevor, I must. He thought of all his friends who liked engines, but strangely none of them would have room for a traction engine at home. It's a shame, he hissed. Then, beep, beep! Why didn't I think of him before? There, on the platform, was the very person. Hello, Edward. You look upset. What's the matter, Charlie? He asked the driver. There's a traction engine in the scrapyard, Vicar. He'll be broken up next week. Jem Cole says he never drove a better engine. Do save him, sir. He saws wood and gives children rides. We'll see, replied the vicar. Jem Cole came on Saturday. The Reverend's coming to see you, Trevor. Maybe he'll buy you. Do you think he will? Asked Trevor hopefully. He will when I've lit your fire and cleaned you up. The vicar and his two boys arrived that evening. Trevor hadn't felt so happy for months. He shuffled about the yard. Show your paces, Trevor, said the vicar. Later, he came out of the office smiling. I've got in cheap, Jem. Cheap. Do you hear that, Trevor? Cried Jem. The Reverend saved you and you live at the vicarage now. Peep, peep, whistled Trevor. Now Trevor's home is in the vicarage orchard, and he sees Edward every day. His paint is spotless and his brass shines like gold.
Trevor likes his work, but his happiest day is the church fair.
With a wooden seat bolted to his bunker, he shuffles round the orchard, giving rides to children. Long afterwards, you will see him shut his eyes, remembering. I like children, he whispers happily. Trevor, the traction engine, enjoyed living in the vicarage orchard. Edward came to see him every day, but sometimes Trevor didn't have enough work to do. I do like to keep busy all the time, he sighed one day. And I do like company, especially children's company. Cheer up, smiled Edward.
Sir Topham Hatt has work for you at his new harbour. I'm to take you to meet Thomas today.
Ah, exclaimed Trevor happily. A harbour! The seaside! Children! That will be lovely! to the harbor with a trainload of metal pilings. They were needed to make the harbor wall firm and safe. "Hello, Thomas," said Edward. "This is Trevor, a friend of mine. He's a traction engine." Thomas eyed the newcomer doubtfully. "A what engine?" he asked. "A traction engine," explained Trevor. "I run on roads instead of rails. Can you take me to the harbor, please?"
Sir Topham Hatt has a job for me.
"Yes, of course," replied Thomas, but he was still puzzled.
Workmen coupled Trevor's car to Thomas's train, and soon they were ready to start their journey. "I'm glad Sir Topham Hatt needs me," called Trevor.
"I don't have enough to do sometimes, you know, although I can work anywhere, in orchards, on farms, in scrapyards, even at harbors." "But you don't run on rails," puffed Thomas. "I'm a traction engine. I don't need rails to be useful," replied Trevor. "You wait and see." When they reached the harbor, they found everything in confusion.
Cars had been derailed, blocking the line, and stone slabs lay everywhere.
"We must get these pilings past," said Thomas's driver. "They are essential. Trevor, we need you to drag them round this mess." "Just the sort of job I like," replied Trevor. "Now you'll see, Thomas. I'll soon show you what traction engines can do." Trevor was as good as his word. Dragged the pilings clear with chains and towed them into position. "Who needs rails?" he muttered cheerfully to himself. Later, Thomas brought Annie and Clarabelle to visit him. Thomas was most impressed.
Now I understand how useful a traction engine can be.
The coaches were full of children. Trevor gave them rides along the harbor. He liked this best of all. "He's very kind," said Annie. "He reminds me of Thomas," added Clarabelle.
Everyone was sorry when it was time for Trevor to go. Thomas pulled him to the junction.
A small tear came into Trevor's eyes. Thomas pretended not to see. He whistled gaily to make Trevor happy.
"I'll come and see you if I can," he promised. "The vicar will look after you, and there's plenty of work for you now at the orchard. But we may need you again at the harbor someday." "That would be wonderful," said Trevor. That evening, Trevor stood remembering his new friend Thomas, the harbor, and most of all, the children. Then he went happily to sleep in the shed at the bottom of the orchard.